I grew up in North Miami, Florida, in true suburbia. And as much as I loved my childhood there, I always knew something was missing. I loved my parents, Dad. I loved my home, I loved my friends, but something was lacking, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. So I decided to go on a mission and make it my lifelong goal to figure out just what that was. And what I found out, what was missing was community. And what is community? I don't even know what that means. So I wanted to find out. And I came up with four building blocks for community. And the first one is the physical. How can we set up our communities? The physical is number one. Where will we live in our communities, and where will our food come from? Where will we buy things, and how will we get there? And where will our water come from? And where will it go when we get it dirty? The physical setup, the roads and the infrastructure and all these things that are so crucial to community. The next one is what I like to call the invisible. And the invisible is things like incorporating, thinking about legal things and government and macro governments and micro governments and decision making and some kind of those things that sometimes make us a little squirmish but critical to success of community. And then the third one, which I know a lot of us love a lot, is the spiritual piece. And how can we bring ritual and ceremony back to our communities? It's the thread that holds it all together. And here, where we are right now, we see it in its full glory, the creative. How can we be more creative? How can we create the physical the physical space to be creative, but also the time in our lives to nurture that? And so I call those the four building blocks of community. And for me, the thing that tied that all together was in 1999, I first heard about permaculture. And permaculture comes from two words, permanent and culture. And it was coined by a guy from Tasmania, Australia, named Bill Mollison. And it was about ecological, conscious, and intentional design and creating human settlements. Creating human settlements? What are we, God? Like, what does that mean? How could you create a human settlement? I mean, I never even thought that I could have any role or any say in that. Permaculture became a very important tool in everything that I was doing and really tied it all together. And so now I'm going to take you on a journey. In 1994, I traveled a semester abroad to Spain. And in Spain, I lived with an elderly woman that I called Abuela in an apartment building on the outskirts of Sevilla. And in Sevilla, the apartment that we lived in a building, and there was 10 others just like it. Kind of bland, but practical. And it was bordered on either end by two major streets. But you never had to go to those streets because you could walk right through the lobby of one building to get into a courtyard to go to the next. And the downstairs of all these buildings were commercial. So there was restaurants, and there was bars, and there was bingo, and there was, everything was right there. Tailors, anything you needed was right down there in your building. And if it wasn't in your building, it was one or two buildings over. And then in between the buildings, there was park benches and trees, and on, the benches, the teenagers would make out, and the old people would, sit around and talk about the way things were. And what I found, and for the first time in my life, I realized what was lacking where I grew up was that. This was a village. This was a community. People cared about each other. People hugged each other. You needed help with your kids that night? No problem. There was 10 people there to help you. Anything you needed, it was all right there. It was true community, and I was inspired. And what I realized is that by the physical setup of these buildings, it nurtured community, which in turn improved quality of life. And that's important. The next thing I learned in Spain on that same trip about design and community was one of the greatest inventions of all that they have in Spain, the siesta. Yeah, let's hear it for siesta. Every day from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they close down their shops and businesses, and they go home and take a nap and hang out with their families. Now that's good design. And what I started to realize was that design wasn't just about the physical and setting it all up. Like, we can put little things and little tweaks into our culture, into our fabric that will improve our lives. Siestas are good. Very, very, very good. Shortly after my trip to Spain, I went on vacation to Costa Rica. Pura vida. And on arrival to Costa Rica, I fell in love with the country, but on one of the journeys I was on, I witnessed a playground full of indigenous children get sprayed by a Chiquita banana crop duster. It was painful. I was sick. I was ashamed of my culture, of our culture that was doing that, creating this awful design. That's all it was. It was design. And the design was inherently there to maximize profits for few while the masses struggle. And not only do they struggle, but they live in these toxic situations with very poor quality of life. This was awful design, and I just knew that we could do better. And I had no idea even what that looked like, but I knew I was gonna give it everything I could. My next step was I started a tour company, an educational tour company, bringing high school students down to Costa Rica to show them the beauty of the country, but also to show them the reality of the rainforest destruction, the reality of the cultural decimation, the reality of the multinational agricultural businesses that were just bringing havoc and destroying all harmony in their path. I knew it was wrong. And I didn't want to send these kids home all depressed, so I wanted to try to find solutions. I was 21 years old. I had no idea what I was going to do or how I was going to do that, but I tried to create an experience where they would see something different. And in 1996, the Punta Mona Center for Sustainable Living and Education was born. And not because I knew anything to teach, but I knew I was going to try my best. And Punta Mona is located off the grid, meaning there's no road to get there. You could either take a 25-minute boat ride along the jungle-clad coast or a 2-hour hike through the primary rainforest to get there. And that created some serious physical design challenges. As you can imagine, there was no store there, so we had to grow our own food. It's revolutionary. Grow your own food. It seems so simple. So I got really, I'd say 7 more if I wasn't limited on time, really obsessed with growing my own food, and in particular tropical fruits and plants that would improve my life, and then figuring out ways that I could spread those plants and improve other people's lives. And being off the grid, again, those design challenges, water. Where was our water gonna come from? Where was it gonna go when we got it dirty? All these things I started having to think about it. I never even thought, those things were just taken care of for us. I never even thought about it. So as I was there, we brought over, in the last 18 years, we brought over 10,000 students to confront them with a design challenge, with an alternative, a different way to design things. And not only physically, but the way we treat our food, the way we hold hands before we eat it, the way we treat each other, the way that we interact with our workers. We were dedicated to doing things differently and to show that to these students that came through. And then the next challenge, the next thing that we had to figure out was how are we gonna make decisions, and how are we gonna deal with the invisible piece of it. And as I was living in Punta Mona, I couldn't help but think about our food system and how incredibly broken our food system is. Why do we live clustered in these cities and towns and suburbs while our food is grown across the world or across the country and shipped in big containers and giant ships, bringing food across the world using tons of fossil fuels? Why can't we design our communities to grow food, whether it's on rooftops, whether it's in community gardens, and then take it a step further, the people that live in our communities help grow that food? Wow, so simple. So right there where we live, we're growing food. The next kind of challenge was, I knew that it was really hard to live in Punta Mona, and it was a serious challenge. Immediately after, in the year 2000, I went and I traveled to Bali. Anybody ever been there? Everything is sacred in Bali. Every meal, every flower. There are rituals and ceremonies every day honoring their ancestors and the great powers that be that make this magical thing we call life happen just right. And I was floored by how sacred and incredible and how just grounded and spiritual everything they did was. The other thing in Bali that I really liked was they lived in these multi-generational family compounds. That makes so much sense. It's good for you, huh, Dad? I mean, why would we want to live separate from our families? We love our families. We heard someone the other day in our camp saying, I just moved to New York to get away from my family. I want my dad to live right next door to me. I want to take care of him as he gets older. I want him to help me with my children. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot in Bali. I really learned a lot, and I knew that this was bubbling. I knew that something was happening and that we could do things differently. So as this was happening, I knew that Punta Mona wasn't the place to do it. It wasn't the place to raise my family. It wasn't the place to, it was very remote. My parents were having a harder time getting there. It was, not you, Dad, more Mom. But it was hard, and the climate was difficult. So I was like, wow, I'm a designer. I can design my community just how I want it. So I went out seeking land. I went out seeking land that was closer to the capital city of San Jose. I wanted to be within 45 minutes from the airport, so my friends could come and visit easier, and if I needed to travel, it was a lot easier than it was from Punta Mona. And then I wanted to have clean water. But wait a minute, I'm designing this. I don't just want clean water. I want a crystal clear river that I could dive off boulders into. Wow, it's up to me. It's up to me. I'm gonna paint it exactly how I want it. I love agriculture. I wanna live in a climate where it's easy to grow food. So I set out and I began to seek a property that was just like that. And my father, who had just retired from 35 years as a dentist, supported everything I was saying, especially the family compound. And he was ready to go. Let's do it, Stephen. What should we do? So we decided to go out and raise money to start this community and support this dream. And part of our pitch, sounds weird, but part of our pitch was this new concept of triple bottom line business. As important as the profits that we were hoping to make for our investors, both the environmental and the social improvement that we brought to the world was part of the return. Wow, what a concept. It just seemed like so obvious. When you invest in something, you don't only want to make a profit, but you want to do good. And we successfully raised the money, and the community was born. We bought 46 acres on the Machuca River. And the minute I stepped foot on the banks of that river, I knew that I wanted to live there. I wanted to grow old there. I wanted to take care of my parents there. I wanted to play with my children there. And we did it. And the first thing we did is we started planting hundreds of fruit trees. Everything I had at Punta Mona, like Noah's Ark style, brought all the plants that I had at Punta Mona over to this community, and we planted them everywhere. And then we're starting to go through the physical. Where was our water going to come from? We had a subterranean river running right through the property. We dug a deep well and built water storage at the top of the property. Roads, how are we going to get around? Asphalt, cement, no way. We found these recycled plastic grates that create the most incredible and sustainable and practical roads. Septic, how are we going to do it? We're going to have 70 families. Where are they going to poop? Where's it going to go? So we built one of the largest methane digesters in the world. It actually turns from a problem to a solution, a very important permaculture principle. The solution, the problem of having so much poop and needing to bring gas in to cook, and the solution, we just fed 2 birds with 1 plate. The methane that produces from the septic that we have then fuels the kitchens throughout the community. So it just seemed like, wow, we are the designers. We can create the reality that we want and the reality that we dream. Thanks. Thank you. And then the next thing that we had to figure out is how are we going to set it up, between us. And this one, we decided that every group would own their own space. They would own it, and then they would be partners in the communal space. And the communal space, what we did different about that, it was instead of putting the communal space off to the side, we chose the very best spot in the property, where your typical developer would save that to sell as a premium. We decided to make the best spot the communal area. And then we put up, a communal yoga space and shared buildings and a naturally filtered pool. And that's our whole community center. And instead of having a golf course, which is common the way communities are developed, you build your houses around a golf course, we had giant orchards and huge greenhouses and gardens. And the roads, we had the law, they had to be 18 feet wide. We only made them 12 feet wide, and we turned 6 feet into green space and planted fruit trees all along. So as you drive in, there's fruit dripping on your path. Quite amazing. And the last thing is we knew we wanted to teach our children there and create a different kind of school. And I always said, I will not have children until I know where I'm going to build their school. And now I know. So it's super exciting. It's happening. Meanwhile, the year's 2006, I organized a 250-person camp with a whole crew here at Burning Man. And it's a week after Burning Man, and we're still in the storing our stuff in the storage unit in Reno. And I looked around, and I was like, come on, you guys, let's do this permanently. We just worked so hard to create this. Let's go and do it. There's a piece of land right up the road from what we're doing in Costa Rica. Let's go make it happen permanently. So I'll tell you a little bit about this because it's different. We set it up different. Instead of buying the land as a small group and then selling it to other people, we came in and the Tacotal Collective was born. I convinced them to come down, and we bought the property up the road. And Tacotal is a Costa Rican word for the state of land after you clear it for agriculture, and then you let it come back for several years. And what happens, these pioneer species come back. And these pioneer species are the most healing plants. They not only heal the land, but they're the medicinal plants that heal us. So there we were, 33 friends, 33 members of our Burning Man camp, the healers, the pioneers. Tacotal was born, and now it's thriving. There's houses being built. There's kids playing in the river. And the two communities are side by side. They were set up differently. They were set out for different people, but they're working, and it's on, and it's exciting. And you may be wondering, great, Stephen, great dreams, you know, but how does this, what can I do? I'm going to try to break it down. I'm going to break it down into just very simple. Now what? What will we do? Where do you want to live? The first question asks, where do you want to live? Do you want to live in the city? Do you want to live in the country? Do you want to live in the United States? Do you want to live in abroad? Do you want to live in abroad? Do you want to live, maybe I do. Do you want to live abroad? I mean, these are the kind of decisions that you have the choice to decide where you want to live. And now the fun part comes in. Who do you want to live with? Who do you want to live with? And not just your favorite people, your best friends. Who can help you pull this off? Do you have friends that are plumbers? Do you have friends that are builders? Do you have friends that are teachers? Who are the people that you want to join together to pull this off? So now you know where, and now you know with who. Now what? Now you get down to the nitty gritty. What's our spiritual practice? How are we going to make decisions? How are we going to physically set this up? You know, this is, you're down to it. You've chosen where and you've chosen with who. Now do it. What are the laws in those places? And I'm not saying everybody should get up and pick up and move down to Costa Rica, although it's pretty nice. But what I am saying is people right here, friends right here in this audience, a group of 17 friends were paying high rents in New York City. They saw a co-op go bankrupt, and they bought it together and started paying less rent than they were before, owning their own building. 17 friends living together on 17th Street in Manhattan. Another friend right here on the playa, Berkeley, California, little by little started buying houses next to each other. Now they have 7 houses, all connected, no fences, shared swimming pool, office spaces. We could do this anywhere. Now the hardest part, the fourth and final task here, is to take a deep breath. All of us, let's do it. Dig deep down into our souls and figure out how to break our chains and let go of the way things are and really dedicate to figuring out how we can make them be. The time is now, my friends, and we are the ones we've been waiting for. I dare you to start thinking, where am I going to do this? With who do I want to live? Now is the time. We can repaint this planet with ecological communities, and we start engaging in our greater communities around us. And little by little, we make this beautiful planet Earth healthier, more beautiful, and more fun. Pura vida, Black Rock City. Thank you.